G'day poker people, welcome back. Speaking of welcome back, I just returned to Tampa from my road trip up the east coast of the United States, and even though I'd gambled a bunch on said road trip, I wasn't done yet. I still had that bug and I wanted to keep gambling, keep playing poker, and because there was about 15 days left in the month of October, I actually saw this as a really good opportunity to go play at one of my favorite poker rooms in all of Florida, the Derby Lane Poker Club. Partially because Derby Lane actually runs this extremely generous promotion in my opinion, where if you play their 1-3 game for 50 hours in a calendar month, you get paid $500 cold hard cash. So there's plenty of incentive to get me off of my ass and into the poker room gambling. So definitely wanted to play those 50 hours in the remaining 2 weeks of the month, but on top of that, I actually saw this as a bit of an inspiration to start a brand new poker challenge for the vlog. I want to make $50 an hour playing in this 1-3 game. If you saw in my previous video, recording at Derby Lane, it's definitely a very action juicy 1-3 game. So I think winning $50 an hour is probably possible. I'm very optimistic about it at the least. So I want to see if I can do it. Hopefully it makes some entertaining content for you guys. We're going to record every session at Derby for the month and see how we go at the end of it. I do have a few rules for this challenge. Number one, I'm not allowed to table change or bum hunt any of the games. I want to be a good reg in these games and I want to keep a fun, friendly environment for the recreational players so that hopefully they want to come back again. I feel like if you go around table changing all the time and bum hunting them, it kind of just makes it a hostile environment for them, and that's just not the vibe I'm going for at all. So I'm not allowed to table change, even if I do think it will help increase my win rate. Rule number two, I'm not allowed to pressure the table to straddle. Now, if someone asks to straddle, I'm definitely not going to say no. I mean, that would actually be bad for the game in my opinion, but I just don't want to be the guy like constantly asking people to straddle, trying to make the game bigger, even though that might help my win rate in the short term and it might help me win the challenge. I don't think it's good for the game's long-term growth, and these rules are just here because I don't want to be a shit reg. Like, I actually want the game to be fun for the other players in the game. And rule number three, the $500 bonus does count towards the $50 an hour. I mean, it's essentially a rakeback program, so like I've earned it if I play the 50 hours, so I feel like it should count towards the win rate. And that's it, 3 simple rules. So hopefully we can follow all of them 100% and still win $50 an hour in this 1-3 game. I'm optimistic, but let's see if it's well-found optimism or not. And let's go play this first session. Showed up to the Derby Lane Poker Room at about 8 p.m. on a Thursday night where I got into the action. Let's go. We are off to the races in the $50 an hour challenge into this deep stack 1-3 game for 1,000 bangers. Let's see if we can run it up to $50 an hour. And things start off on a very positive note when we've got pocket nines under the gun. I go ahead and raise it up to 10 and then I get 3 different callers. So we're 4 ways to a flop of a 6-5 deuce rainbow. And then things get interesting when a passive big blind actually leads into the field for 15. The action's on me here, and I think raising here would be a bit of an overplay. Sure, it's possible that the opponent does have 6x, 5x, 2x combinations in their range, as well as pocket 7s and pocket 8s, but I think it's also pretty likely that they could have flatted pre-flop with a hand that's essentially an overpair to ours, being that they're passive. I don't think they're always going to like look down at pocket jacks and just automatically 3-bet it. So there is some concern we're behind, lose to straights and sets and 2 pairs as well. So I decided to just call here, see what develops, particularly with 2 people still left to act. And both those opponents actually fold, so we are heads up to a turn, which is the 5 of clubs, pairing middle pair, and then the big blind keeps betting, and they go ahead and make it 50. And if I was concerned that I was behind on the flop, I'm definitely concerned here. I lose to any 5x now. Plus, our range looks like we have a lot of overpairs, and our opponent is continuing with a very, very large bet size. I think they're completely nutted here. And I actually go with my read and decide to fold my pocket nines. Let me know if you think that's too nitty in the comments below. But if I'm going to maintain a strong win rate in this 1-3 game, I need to make massive exploits like this to try and crush my opponents when I don't think they have any bluffs in their range. And that's what I'm trying to do in this first hand. Next hand, a passive player limps under the gun, and then a loose aggressive middle position player raises it to 20. They get called by a tight aggressive button. Then the action folds to my big blind with ace-jack offsuit. I think this is a pretty good spot to go go ahead and 3-bet squeeze. I really don't like having cold calls out of position, particularly in a game that doesn't rake pre-flop. I think you're much better off just playing 3-bet or fold and just avoid paying a bunch of rake. It's going to be very helpful for the win rate in the long run. I decided to 3-bet it here. Could fold as well. Wouldn't hate that play, but that's definitely the less fun option for the vlog. So I go ahead and 3-bet it up to a 105, and then the limper folds. Then the action's back on the aggressive middle position player, and they go ahead and rip it all in. They have us covered. We have 950 in our stack. The button folds. The action's back on me, and I think we've been caught with our hand in the cookie jar a bit here. It is a loose aggressive opponent, so we could be ahead sometimes if they're bluffing with like king queen, ace 5 suited or something, but it's just not worth it. I think they're probably going to have ace king and ace queen pure. Probably all of the pairs that are 10s and bigger pure, and we're just an absolute dog against that range. So we have a pretty easy fold here. Definitely been making a lot of disciplined folds to kick things off, but things definitely change in this next hand. This next hand is an absolute doozy. So the $6 straddle was on under the gun, but then a very fun action player at the table was like, "Wait, buddy, do you want to put on the $12 straddle?" And I do the army salute and say, "Yes, sir," because he was giving a lot of action to the game, so I'll definitely put a double straddle on if he wants. And then before the cards are even dealt, he blind goes all in for 1,500. No, I'm not joking. No cards have been dealt at this point. He moves his stack all in. Clearly he's here for an action game, but then the dealer finally does deal the cards to everyone. And then the action actually folds to my second straddle, so I'm the last to act. And then I still haven't looked at my cards at this point, and I just straight up asked the guy, "Do you want me to call without looking?" And then he kind of unenthusiastically shrugs and is like, "Sure." So of course I'm going to give him this flip in this spot. I throw in the call. Sure, I'm going to get roasted by a lot of people in the comments, but I do think giving the action player a flip when he clearly wants one is a really good spot to not only A, keep him entertained, make sure he stays in the game, but also two, I think it's actually a pretty good spot for me, because if this guy's just going to be going all in every hand, taking a 50-50 spot with him to try and double up, it's actually kind of plus EV, because if we just decided to wait for a strong hand, we'd run the risk that someone else at the table would pick up the strong hand and then they would end up stacking him. Whereas if we play it like this, we're pretty much getting a 50-50 chance to double up. I mean, you have to discount the fact that the house takes rake, but I think for those reasons, it actually becomes a plus EV spot in spite of the rake you're paying. So I throw in the call, and we are absolutely gambling hard in this session. So we're not going to peel our cards until the board is dealt for maximum drama. The board runs out 3, 8, king, 9, 10. And then the cutoff shows King 5 offsuits. They actually have top pair on this board, and it's a pretty bad scenario for us. We're really going to need to have diamonds, straight, or a 2 pair on this board. And then we peel the 9 of clubs first. So we do have a few opportunities to make 2 pair or a set on this board. Fingers crossed that we do hit one of them when we peel the second card, which is the 6 of spades. So yeah, that's not going to be good. We do end up losing the flip to the fun opponent, so GG there. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to get any of that money back because a fun player ended up losing his stack to someone else at the table. So a bit of a bummer that we didn't get any of that back, but I will always maintain, I think I've said this on the vlog before, most notably the Philadelphia live vlog, if a fun player wants to flip with you, you gotta take it. And I took it here and it just didn't work out this time, or the last time I did it, but hey, that's poker for you. We've all got bad beat stories. Before we get into the next hand, I just wanted to take this opportunity to invite all of you to join the Anti-Gambling Gambling Club. Head over to lebets.com. We have a bunch of different anti-gambling gambling club t-shirts, hats, and hoodies in all different types of sizes and colors. So head over to lebets.com and join the club. But for now, let's get back into the gambling. There's definitely a little bit of a bummer that the fun player did leave the game, but we've still got plenty of action because this next hand is a double board bomb pot. Let's go. These are always fun, particularly in this hand because we have the button with king 6 of diamonds. Always love playing these hands on the button. Let's see if we can hit any of the flops. And the first one is a 9-6-6 rainbow. Let's go. And the second one is queen 8-3 with 2 clubs. So not much going on that one, but we do have trips on the first board, and then the action checks to a loose aggressive big blind who goes ahead and bets 30. Then they get called by a tight aggressive under the gun player next to act. Then the action folds to my button, and I think we have a pretty interesting decision here, whether we want to start trying to turn our hand into a bluff so we can fold out something that has a pair on the second board, or whether we just want to flat, play it a bit more cautious, maybe keep in some dominated 6x combinations that we can scoop. I decided to call in this instance. Could go either way though. Let me know what you would do in the comments below. Whatever the case, I flat, and then a tight aggressive small blind check raises to 100. The big blind calls to 100. The under the gun player folds. Now the action's back on me, and I really don't think we can beat folding here, but I'm a little bit concerned. I think it's very likely the small blind does have a full house on the first board, being that they check raised after 3 other people have V-pipped. It just seems like a line I would definitely take if I had pocket 9s or 9-6, maybe even A6 as well. So I do think their range is really strong, but folding would just be a little bit too tight. We are getting a really good price to play the pot in position. We do have some outs to improve on that board. So I decided to throw in the call here, and we have 3 ways to 2 different turns. The first one is the 10 of clubs, and the second one is the 5 of clubs, putting in the front door flush on the second board. And then the small blind rips it all in for 700. The big blind tanks a little bit before throwing in the call, so the action's back on me, and as much as he sucks, I think we have a pretty obvious fold in this spot. I'm almost for certain that the small blind does have either a full house or maybe like a 6x of clubs hand. If the chances they have a full house on the first board is very likely, and I think if the big blinds did have a worse 6x combination, which is possible, I think they would have at least considered folding, being worried about me left to act behind. But when they do call, I think the chances that we're getting scooped is too likely, particularly because we have absolutely nothing on the second board. So I do decide to make yet another disciplined fold. We are making a lot of disciplined folds in this vlog. I end up making a fold, and then the small blind does show pocket 9s. Let's go. So he by himself would have scooped us. The big blind ends up showing 6-4 of clubs. So there you go. They had an absolute monster. They had a trips on the first board, clubs on the second board. So we would have been in deep, deep shit if we did call. So very happy I made the fold. And the first river is the king of clubs. So they actually would have given us a full house, which would have been way harder to get away from. So very glad we did get away from it on the turn. The second river is the 4 of diamonds. And yeah, making disciplined folds and not getting stacked as a result. That's always fun. Next hand up is a fun one because we've got a double straddle on, so we're playing a bit of 1-6-12, and the second straddle is actually on the button. Another beautiful thing about playing a derby land, you can double, triple, quadruple straddle, whatever you want from any position in the hand, so it's always fun. So they're the $12 straddle on the button, so the action starts on my small blind with pocket 9s. Let's go, another strong hand, pocket 9s for the second time this session. I raise it up to 45, and then I only get called by the loose aggressive button second straddle. So we are heads up to a flop, and it's a banger. It is a 9-6-3 with 2 hearts. Let's go, top set. I go ahead and check it over to my loose aggressive opponent. I think they're going to bet a lot once check to, and we're very happy to induce action when we have the literal nuts. So I check it over to them, and then they do check back, unfortunately. So we're heads up to a turn, which is the 3 of spades, giving us a full house. Not that I think we needed it. Now, I definitely want to go ahead and bet. I actually think it's pretty likely that the button does have some type of showdown value when they're a loose aggressive opponent and they check back in position. I think if they just had complete air, they probably would stab at it. But the fact that they check back, I think they have some type of showdown value or a draw. So I think we can get a bigger bet paid off here. So I go ahead and make it 75, and then they do call. So it heads up to a river, which is the ace of clubs. Really love seeing this river. I think if the opponent did float on the turn with an X combination, they're definitely going to go ahead and bet it and maybe call a check raise. And if they did miss a draw, I think we can check it over to them to induce stabs. So I think this is a really good spot to go for the check raise. So I check it over to them. Then they go ahead and bet 100. We love to see that. Now I think we have a pretty no-brainer all in here. Put max pressure on the ace X, see if we can get stacks with that hand. So I rip it all in for 780, and then the big blind shows me king 8 of hearts face up. So there you go. They had the flush draw on the flop, and we almost let them get there for cheap. But obviously they're going to go ahead and fold king high on the river. I informed them that that was a good fold, that my full house beats king high. Next hand up, we've got the double straddle on yet again. This is definitely playing bigger than a 1-3 game, which is definitely going to be advantageous towards the challenge. Whatever the case though, the action's on my cutoff with King Jack offsuit. I raise it to 30 and then I get 3 different callers. So we are going super multi-way to a flop of 10-7-7 with 2 clubs. The action checks to me, and even though we have position in this hand, I think it's probably just a good spot to check it, try and see a free turn. Maybe I'm showing a little bit of a lack of discipline here because I actually stab at it. I go ahead and make it 50. I think this is probably too loose. The chances any of the opponents have a 10, a 7, or a flush draw are pretty likely. So I really just don't think we're getting many folds. Whatever the case though, I made it 50 and then I only get called by a tight aggressive straddle. So we are heads up to a turn, which is the king of clubs giving us top pair and a third nut flush draw. When the opponent checks it over to me, I think we have a pretty clear just check here. Very concerned that my opponent has 7x or a flush, and being that they are a tighter opponent, even if they do have a 10, I don't really think they're going to want to put much more money on the pot on this turn card. So I check it back, protecting my range a bit, and then we're heads up to a river, which is the 4 of hearts. The big blind checks it over to me. Now I think we have a pretty clear value bet in this spot. I think if my opponent had a flush or a 7, there's a decent chance that they would just bet out on the river. So I think it's very likely that they do have a 10x hand. So I really don't think that hand is going to be able to call a large bet. So I size down to 50 here. This is 1/4 of the pot. Like, are you going to fold your 10 for 1/4 of the pot? Let's find out. I go ahead and bet 50, and then the opponent is in the tank probably a good 2 minutes or so. Kind of wild facing a quarter size pot bet, but whatever the case, he does eventually decide to fold. So good fold by him. Guess it took him a while to come to that conclusion, but unfortunately we do not get any value with our top pair here, and maybe got too greedy. Next hand up only has the single under the gun straddle on, which wasn't spicy enough apparently for my friend in the small blind here, who blind raises out of turn to 100 before any of the cards have been dealt. So yeah, I don't think we're playing a 1-3 game tonight. Whatever the case though, the action folds around to the small blind, whose 100 is forced to stand, and then I'm in the big blind and I peel ace-4 offsuit. Now I think this is a pretty interesting spot with what we want to do with this hand. The plus EV play here for sure is to go all in for 1100. If you think about it like a tournament, we only have 11 big blinds, and ripping it all in here with a high card denying equity to the straddles range as well as the small blind range, we're definitely going to make a lot of EV for doing that. Having said that though, it is a big risk. I mean, if we're only playing a 1-3 game, taking numerous 2k flips like this all the time is going to be kind of dicey. And this one's actually a lot worse than the other one because the opponents will have an opportunity to look at their hands and just cool the shit out of me if they do wake up with a monster. But I'm here to make a good win rate and make as much EV as I possibly can. So I have to take the plus EV spot here. I rip it all in for 1100, and then the straddle peels his cards and he says, can I rat hole from my stack? So I'm guessing he really didn't want to flip for large amounts of money, so he ends up folding his hand. And then the action's on the small blind, and he actually shows me the ace of clubs, but he's tanking. He's not snap calling, which is a good sign. I mean, I'm sure if he had anything like ace 10 or stronger, he would snap call, but anything weaker, we're going to be chopping with a lot or losing to, so really wouldn't mind if he folded that hand. And then he ends up showing me the 2 of clubs as well, and he does end up folding. So I end up showing my hand to him. You know, he's an action player, obviously. I want to keep him happy and show him that he made a good fold, but I was pretty happy to take it down against that hand because we are going to chop most of the time. I don't have to have the opportunity to get stacked. I just pick up a cool $100 and very happy that I went for the highest EV play in this spot. Let's go. Next hand up is a double board pom pot. Let's go. I love these bloody things. And then I'm in the cutoff with a 7-3 offsuit. So definitely not the best hand in the world, but you know, any hand is live in a double board bomb pot. So the first flop comes down a 9-7 deuce with 2 diamonds. The second flop comes down Jack 9 deuce with 2 clubs. So really don't have much except for middle pair bed kicker on the first board. So when the action checks to me, I go ahead and check it. Really don't want to bluff into 5 different people. And the button agrees. They check it as well. So we do get 2 free turns. The first one is the 7 of clubs, let's go, and the second one is the 10 of diamonds. The action checks to me this time. Now I definitely want to go ahead and bet. Can't really get called by any hands that we scoop, and I think the best play here is just to go ahead and bomb it and try to get someone off of like ace high on the second board that isn't going to call. I go ahead and bet 40. I think this is a mistake. I think I should be betting something closer to 100 just to realize as much fold equity as possible. I made the mistake here, I only bet 40, and then I do get a call from a passive massive small blind. So we're heads up to two different rivers. The first one is the King of Spades and the second one is the Three of Spades, giving us a little bit of showdown value on the second board. The small blind checks it over to me, and now I catch up to where I should have been on the turn and go ahead and absolutely bomb it. Sure, we do have a pair on the second board now, but I think we have no showdown value, no hands we can get called by that we will scoop. I mean, King Queen even has a straight on the second board, so it's not like the opponent's going to have a king. I don't think they floated ace king on the turn, so I think we absolutely have to go ahead and bomb it. And I think we need to use an overbet sizing to get my opponent off of a strong Jack X hand on the second board, or even two pair that might be just scared to call on this run out. I go ahead and bomb it up to 200, really trying to realize my maximum fold equity on the second board. But I think this is a really interesting spot. Let me know what you would do in the comments below. In game, I made it 200 and the small blind doesn't think too long before folding. Hopefully we got him off of a chop. Let me know what you think in the comments below. All right, we got the walk of shame back to the car park here in Derby Lane. And I will stand by 100% always, giving the action player a flip for stacks if that's what they want. So 100% happy with that decision. And this is why I always say, like, you can't be results oriented in terms of how you feel about whether you're doing well or you're doing bad in a session. Like, if you've got a good spot to give a lot of action to a fun player, it's not completely neutral EV because you do have to pay rake, but I think in the long term of the game, it's very positive EV. So yeah, happy with my play today, particularly in that decision, but also some other decisions. So yeah, can't complain too much about a relatively small loss. So there you have it, the most interesting hands from our first session of the brand new challenge. I only played 5 hours and 15 minutes, but I was very, very happy with my performance and my decisions in these hands. Definitely not perfect, and there's a few smaller pots that didn't really even make the vlog where I just could have just been a bit more aggressive and taken them down with double barrels and that. So maybe not fighting as hard as I potentially could have, but overall, extremely happy with my decisions. I will always stand behind the position that if the fun player in the game asks you to flip for stacks, you have to say yes. I mean, technically it's negative EV on the actual money because you'd have to pay rake on the flip, but I think that is vastly outweighed by just giving the fun player some entertainment that they're looking for, some gamble, having the potential to actually stack them when they're probably going to blast off their stack of someone else at the table. I think there's a lot of EV in just getting a 50% chance to do that. And it's just a real win-win situation in my opinion. The only way I would ever be against doing it is if I was like shot taking, and flipping for stacks would actually, the downside of losing would put me in a risk of ruin position. Fortunately, I'm rolled for this game that I'm playing, and I would always employ all of you people watching to play within your means and within your bankroll, so you can do things like flip for stacks with a fun player. On top of that, really happy with all the disciplined folds I made. I just don't think these players were trying to bluff me, so why would I pay them off with my bluff catches? I think being disciplined in these spots is really going to help my win rate and get me towards that $50 an hour. So overall, very happy with my gameplay in this session. I think I earned an A grade for this first session. Despite the strong performance, didn't have the best results that I was hoping for. We are definitely far away from the $50 an hour. We're actually in the red. But I do think if I consistently have performances this strong in the long run, I'll get that $50 an hour, no worries. So that's going to wrap it up for the first challenge. Make sure you hit subscribe so you get the second episode of the challenge to see if I can turn things around and at least get into the green, even if I don't get to that $50 an hour quite yet. But for now, I'm out of here. Peace.